Welcome, everyone, to DZone's Trend Talk for our latest trend report, Security by Design, what developers are prioritizing now. I'm Jesse Davis, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. In DZone's 2026 Security Survey, we asked software professionals how security priorities are changing across architecture, infrastructure, delivery pipelines, and operations. The headline is, Security is moving closer to the systems used to build and run software. Respondents are prioritizing data-centric security, cloud guardrails, automated controls and CI/CD, and runtime monitoring, while also reporting that some of the biggest barriers to progress are organizational, not just technical. One important note about today's discussion, you'll notice that we have a panel. This panel brings together experts who work closely with engineering and security teams across the market. So rather than speaking only from one internal operating model, we're going to focus on what these panelists are seeing across all their customers and organizations, including where priorities are shifting, where execution is lagging, and what patterns are becoming hard to ignore. So now let's introduce these experts. Steven Zimmerman, DevOps Security Solutions Manager at Black Duck. Brad McCarty, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Fusion Auth. Jeremy Katz, Vice President of Code Security at Sonar. And Boris Zykin, Lead Cloud Solution Architect at Cloud Astro. Now, first talking point, want to jump kind of right into the research, if I can this morning. Our research is showing that data-centric security is now the most consistently prioritized architecture. 25% ranked it as their top model, and now 62% place it in their top 3. Perimeter-based security kind of remains present, but it's no longer dominant in how respondents are ranking their priorities. So from your perspective, what is driving this move beyond perimeter first thinking? Why do we see that shift? And Brad, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think specifically with us at Fusion Auth, moving around perimeter first is people are seeing an expanding attack surface outside of that perimeter, right? Like we were talking before this, before the recording about AI agents and, how they are impacting things. So I think for us, kind of the clearest shift that we see is really multi-tenant SaaS. Teams used to say like, oh, well, our users are behind a firewall, so that's sufficient. And now they're asking more about like what permissions does this specific user or this specific agent carry across what tenants, and how can we prove it in an audit log and on demand?
Cool. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's also playing into this is just an increase in defense in depth. You can't just stop at one spot. You actually really need to just think of the layers of the onion and all of the places that you can have security.
Yep. Steven?
Yeah. I often lean on metaphors or analogies. I always conflate the two. And so I go with the construction analogy. You might have some custom built homes. They've got prefab parts. They've got custom made parts. They've got stone fireplaces that you core yourself. And then you get a fence that you put around it. But the house doesn't always end up the same shape. Somebody adds an addition later on that you didn't expect. And now your fence is several meters closer to the edge. And now someone can reach the house with a ladder. And I think that's, we're starting to see that shift toward, as many of us might have heard, securing the windows and the doors. You may still need the fence, but ensuring that you have quality materials that are less likely to be entered against your will, exploited in this case. That's something that you can always prepare for, regardless of the shape of your perimeter, so to speak.
Cool. Boris, anything to add?
Yes, basically, from my experience, that actually this movement come from and to mostly in banking and investment companies. So they start building not only, so they start moving from perimeter security closer to the like zero trust architecture mostly. And it's the more close data center to their environment or inside their infrastructure, then it's even better. So this is the one thing that we are currently seeing now in this movement.
Okay, what do people mean when they're saying data centric anyway? Right, I'm an old school database guy, so I mean, when you say data centric to me, I'm thinking like Foxbase, DBase, something like that. But what does it actually mean in practice? And Stephen, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I appreciate you giving your background, Jesse. I don't think in this data centric format. In fact, when I do think of data centricity, I might be approaching it from an angle of the sensitivity of the information that you access, transport, manage, those types of things. And I don't necessarily think this is a strict data centric definition of security, but I come at it from the how attractive is the target to potential attackers. And then the opposing point of view, when you have data that is quite sensitive and you have these regulations and regulatory bodies that are compelling the security of it, I think of data-centric as aligning to those compliance requirements, aligned to the value to attackers and the sensitivity according to compliance standards.
Okay. So more along the lines of like CCPA, GDPR, that how attractive is that gold that we're trying to lock away? Got it. Okay, Brad, what do you think?
It's a big question for us. We have a lot of talk about it internally, and Boris, you talked about zero trust, and I think for us that is a very data centric thing, right? Because we think about it from the identity layer first, because identity, as we see it, is how you execute zero trust. So the data centric side that goes into that is, what is every cloud workload? What's every API call, every AI agent action? Those are all data points that then feed into the control point, so that it can hold consistently across all of them.
Okay, cool. Boris, from your perspective, what's data centric mean?
So basically, data centric means that we are feeding our models with data, right? And sometimes people forget to add this security layer that will do the complete data masking. So it will remove all sensitive information from the data that will come outside of the information. This means data centric. So because we are building our data pipelines and feeding them our models, so to say, yeah. And this is why data centric solution and frameworks became more popular, yeah. And this is the security layer between data company and LLM provider. It's really important right now. So this is to include data regulation as well.
Okay, several different ways to approach it. Jeremy, where do you land? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, especially in kind of the discussion we're having and kind of the framing here, for me, data-centric security really is around thinking about, how do you secure the data? Is it on disk? If somebody gets the disk, can they read it, or is it encrypted? If somebody's snooping the network, can they snoop it? Why are you doing encrypted traffic? So really, it is this like, how do you think? This goes back to all the layers. Like, it is just kind of this like, you just want to make sure that wherever the data is, that it's staying encrypted. Like, that is really, and keeping it secure. Like, that's what's at the end of the day what we're trying to do.
Okay, cool. And varied answer. I mean, that's why we asked the question, is we all approach these things from different points. But I want to talk about architecture now. So from your perspective, what architectural model is translating into the clearest operational changes from your perspective? Boris, we'll start with you.
So basically, the operational here, it's very important to detect what data and what information should be hide, so to say, from sharing outside, yeah, from model, from other company. And the second one, we need to introduce like a policy, yeah, which we already mentioned in the DZone Trend report. So policy that will allow or act our architecture or our design to avoid sharing this data outside. Yeah, like open policy, for example. Yeah, and the second one, we can introduce this so-called security layer, but this is not an architectural. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the shameless plug on the trend report. We all felt that was awesome, especially Neely. Brad, what do you think on this question? Like, what architectural model is like translating best for operational changes for you guys right now?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hit on this in my previous answer, right? Identity first, zero trust. That's that. Like I said, that's the way that you actually, the identity is how you control zero trust. I think probably the interesting sort of operational shift that we are seeing around that is the depth of the service account is the catch-all, which is scary because people tend to, over prioritize them, give them far more credential abilities than what they ever need. And then because they're building that service account in kind of I need this to do this today. They don't really think about, well, what happens when that is done, and so when do those credentials expire? And so oftentimes we're seeing people who are using their own personal API keys to give, credentials to a service account that then never expire. So just kind of bad behavior from a security standpoint all around.
Cool. And I want to jump to the next question kind of midstream because Stephen had a good answer to this one earlier. I really liked how you were talking about the construction model with securing the doors and windows. But there's still these assumptions, legacy assumptions. We don't want to say old, but that's okay. I'm legacy. I mean, old. But those, when I think about perimeter security, it's probably not I'm probably not assuming and thinking the right things. So Stephen, if you're going to help an old guy like me, change and speed up, like where is my thinking slowing my teams down? Like what advice would you give?
Yeah. So my response to you, it might vary it might depend on what role you perform. Are you on the security side or the dev side? When I was thinking back, yeah, right. And when I was thinking, back to the RSA event, earlier in this year, I spoke with someone she was on the security side and lamenting about effectively the organizational change that you're starting to discuss here, which is she's like, I need this type of, I need to accomplish these security related tasks, but I'm having my engineering team, I can't get them to accept the things that I'm telling them. I'm getting a lot of pushback. That's just delaying things. I'm telling them it's a priority and I'm getting this pushback. So the operational shift that you mentioned earlier, I see it as, I always basically say that now we're starting to see the need for security as a result, not so much security as an action. And then that result needs to come as the result of the stuff that developers are just doing every day anyway. And so that prioritization, and Boris, you mentioned policies. I think policies are effectively the mechanism that the priorities that you define on the security side, those policies reflect your best interests to the developer. And so, because I don't want a developer wasting time fixing things that I'm going to triage out anyway. If it doesn't touch the sensitive information that we discussed earlier, don't waste your time chasing down a medium severity vulnerability in an app that's just internal communications for corporate morale that's behind my firewall and, has a totally different perimeter defense than something external that touches PII or something like that. So that's kind of the operational shift as I perceive it.
I love that. And I love how you kind of tied those two things together as something that's important. Anything you want to add into this, Jeremy?
Yeah, I was actually going to jump in because I think another thing that we're seeing is a blurring of lines. You need to have security being everybody's job, much like testing is everybody's job. We just have more things where it is this, developers just have to do more. Which is a downside.
You're going to drop shift right in the middle of our discussion and ruin it.
But it is this, security is everybody's responsibility. Having, a security team that's entirely disconnected from your engineering organization isn't going to lead to the best outcomes. And that's just becoming increasingly true. Like that's becoming true faster and faster. And you can't wait until the security team runs a security test on the code you write, because the code you wrote is already in production at that point. The cat's out the bag. So,
It's such a hard thing too. I mean, shift right, shift left. We're going to argue which direction it should go. We do. And we talk about the organizational changes. Building software that secures is just really hard. We designed the whole entire freaking internet to share information. Now we're trying to lock it up. So, I get it. But all of us are gainfully employed. So let's talk a little bit, and we'll move down that path a little bit more, on guardrails, right? Cloud guardrails. Another finding in our report, is this idea of posture management. And 20% ranked cloud guardrails as their top approach, and 55% placed them among their top 3 priorities. So the report describes a shift from this kind of reactive review towards more of a preventative enforcement inside provisioning and deployment workflows themselves, right? So are you seeing some of these cloud guardrails? I mean, does that resonate with you, your teams, and the people who are buying your stuff? Like, what do you think? Maybe I jump in there.
I think one of the things that we are seeing more often in our discussions, both potential customers and people who are already customers of ours, is where it's clearly improving is for us IAC governance, policy as code. When you Jeremy, you talked about this, like things being cats out of the bag, already out in the wild, right? So catching a misconfigured IAM role in a pull request is going to cost a fraction of fixing the problem after it's already deployed.
Right. Yeah, the whole idea of cost going down as you push the work back upstream. That's great. I love that. Stephen, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I'm the thoughtful face that you see in front of you is, so when I think of these, so I like that we're talking in the guardrails terms. Historically, we've said security gates or checkpoints, and those things are a hard stop and then a clearance and then a go. You can make that as quickly as you want. But now you've got these AI-enabled development pipelines. You've got semi-autonomous agents that I forget, Brad or Jeremy may have mentioned, now you are potentially over-provisioned in some ways, and that pipeline is going to keep moving quite quickly. You don't know, it's just going to speed right over those gates. So I like the guardrails moniker that we've ascribed here. And along those lines, I see that divide. So on the cloud side, I'm picturing this as cloud ops job at this point, right? I've reached deployment. My engineering team are now 1-2 different version or feature branches. They've moved on. And now there's an issue, an exploitable component or some sort of 0-day or something like that. It affects something in production. Well, that's cloud ops. Is engineering going to know that, well, we fixed that in our next release. We haven't pushed it yet. I forget if it's in the thing that we just pushed out last week. And on-prem versus cloud deployments, I don't know. That's cloud ops job. And so those guardrails, I think those help bridge that delay between finding out something could be or is an issue that cloud ops needs to fix or to address, start the triage process and the issue management workflows. Those guardrails give you that little bit of buffer of time to then communicate with the dev team to get things fixed. That's how I kind of view it.
Okay. Boris, what do you want to add in here? And are you actually seeing value, like in stuff that Stephen's laying out?
Yeah, that actually has a big value because we can save time and money. Because we will start already seeing the results before we actually start doing the deployment. So, we can already start doing analysis using AI. It was actually already implemented in many cloud providers and products. So using this approach before, then deploying it after and see the analysis after. So it's really good.
Okay, Jeremy, what do you want to add?
And I think AI has now come up a couple of times, so I'm
We're
glad
not
I don't
even
have.
there yet, but we're
I'm
close.
glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have to be. But this idea of guardrails is actually really especially crucial as you do have more AI in the mix and more agents doing things, or more. I hate to say vibe coding because I think that's now just coding. But having guardrails in place is actually a really valuable thing then, because it actually can help to guide those sort of agents towards doing the right things and towards avoiding mistakes. And so guardrails are useful for basically that as much as they are for humans. So
Yeah, I like that. And we keep beating around these two bushes, right? Which is the organizational change and the human component, and where AI is going to fit into this. And we're going to get there. I'll get our next two talking points. We're right at that middle mark. So want to give us plenty of time to spend on those last two things. So in our survey, right, we did find that automated security controls and CI/CD, that runtime monitoring post deployment, are almost equally prioritized, right? 42% ranked embedded automated controls among their top DevOps security priorities. All right. 41% said the same for runtime monitoring and controls after deployment. So with the teams that you work with, thinking through, like, what does a mature DevSecOps motion actually look like? What does it actually look like? And, we'll start with any of y'all that want to jump in.
So basically, about the things you just mentioned, it's basically the de facto standard already. I'm not sure if I can mention the company names. Yeah, probably not.
I wouldn't.
No? Yeah, okay. So the big companies that produce in the cloud, and they expecting from the partners to follow these rules. So for example, I've been leading data and AI audit from one of this big company, and in the checklist they already asking about this, so to say. So company should provide solution to their customers and have everything documented based on the post deployment and deployment, and so it's already the standard that everyone should follow. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Unfortunately, cannot say.
We know what you're saying.
Yeah,
we know who you're talking about. All right. So for the rest of y'all, right? And like, what does mature DevSecOps actually look like? Jeremy, what's it look like to you guys?
I mean, I think the reason I think why the survey results show basically half and half is the actual answer is both. Like, actually, that is the you want to trust but verify type of thing. It is this sort of, yes, you want to do it in CI/CD because that tests one part of the system and that tests at one point, but then you want to verify it. You don't want to just go with that's definitely the case. I think that is, I guess I'm repeating myself. It's that defense in depth. It just gives you more chances to catch the problems. And when it comes to security, you're always better off with a little bit of do it in multiple places.
Right. And then for Brad, you and Steven, like, why is it still hard for teams to turn these runtime signals coming in through these things into something development teams can act on and be nice because I'm a developer? Or be mean and it'll hurt my feelings. It's fine.
So I think part of this is human nature, right? And one of the things that I'm hearing is kind of a through line. If I can be so bold as to put words in people's mouths on this, that we need to stop thinking of, like, security prevents things and it becomes security enables things. And so in this context, right, like, teams say that they have security logging. What we actually see are infrastructure logs. And so for us, and this is very specific to my company and what we do. So it's like off event telemetry, like failed logins and MFA bypass attempts and things of that. Those things need to show up in CM in a usable and alertable form. And I don't think that people are thinking about it that way because they're not thinking of it as allowing, they're thinking of it as preventing.
Okay. So it's okay. Cool. I like that idea. Stephen?
Yeah, I feel like this is where, a few years ago you would put up that infinity loop of DevSecOps on the screen. And that doesn't always include
if you did the
enough
animation right. Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't always include enough of the ops side, that's almost an afterthought. And then I've even created versions that have like a little mini circle on the dev side because, you have the developers who are so close to the inception of some of these issues that manifest as exploitable problems down the line, that if we can just preclude it there in that little loop, we don't even need to worry about where it goes farther on down that infinity loop. But tying this back to trying to answer your question of how this becomes a successful DevSecOps program, going back to the guardrails and pulling that through line, as Brad mentioned, forward of SSDF or even EUCRA or certain things put out by OWASP or NIST or what have you, that we actually had put out a report as well. I pulled up a data point here where basically 76% of those people who basically subscribe to 4 or more security frameworks or regulatory compliance strategies and things like that, 76% of them, they're highly effective at tracking like open source dependencies, we'll say. And that's significantly like 21% of those who don't follow such standards or have one are highly effective. And the effective, the numbers don't necessarily matter, but what we're seeing is those who follow more standards, as painful as they can be to implement and as arduous as it can be for the security team to go through and attest to compliance with these standards, we see that people fix faster, they respond to issues more readily, they know where the problems are. When we get to the SBOM part of the conversation, that's a key contributor to a successful DevSecOps program. So if the blueprint for such programs lie in all these diverse and elaborate standards, that helps ultimately manifest as a more responsive, more capable DevSecOps initiative.
Okay. And we're going to jump to the SBOM stuff right now. Might as well. That way we can get to the last two that we've been talking about the whole time. So, so in the survey, we always have, this automated dependency and vulnerability scanning, like within CI/CD. 23% ranked it as the single most impactful measure, and 67% placed it among its top 3. So pretty important stuff. SBOM awareness is high, but only 12% said their organizations both generate these SBOMs and enforce them in production pipelines. So we have a bit of a gap that we want to talk about. So first question, kind of, why do you think that this scanning is such a high priority for everyone? And then why are we kind of struggling when we move from visibility to this enforceable supply chain policy? Like, where's that gap and what's happening there? And Brad, let's go back around the other direction. Start with you.
Sure. Logs for Shell. Logs for Shell did it. Exautils kind of reinforced it. The realization that you are shipping code that you didn't write and probably haven't read. When that blows up in production and you can no longer say we're going to get to it later, that's not that is an untenable posture. And so the CVE's got a name, it made headlines, executives ask about it by name. That's when scanning budgets suddenly go, oh, hey, there's money to be had or money to be spent here.
Okay. Stephen?
Yeah, I'm going to write down something Brad said so I can talk about it later. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I think of the SBOM. It depends on how you view the SBOM. Kind of an obvious statement, but I think the SBOM itself, that's an artifact of what you're doing. I don't think a lot of people wake up in the morning saying, "I need me an SBOM." No, I need to know what I'm shipping and I need to know what its risk profile is. That's really what I need to do. And whether, decades ago, if that was, I talked to people who would track their open source consumption in Excel spreadsheets. And now we're finally to the point where people are tracking open source and third party in their applications. Well, now farther down the line in the supply chain, your customers, your partners want to know that you're a trustworthy vendor, that you're a trustworthy partner. I'm taking on your risk. Can you please show me what you are providing me? And that then extends to the business driver. And Brad, you kind of mentioned the money portion of this that drives all of our businesses. And that idea that it's now getting to the point where the software bill of materials that I can pass and show as attestation of my, not only my risk posture, but also then for things like EU CRA, the fact that I'm ready to act readily. If I can prove that, well, now I can answer an RFP a little bit more affirmatively. And I can be the preferred vendor over my competitors to the people that I'm trying to sell to and work to. Security shifts from being that cost center to a revenue driver, or at least a business engine in some ways. And the SBOM is just the artifact of putting all those pieces in place.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, all of that, and I'll do the analogy this time. If you went to the grocery store and you were picking something off the shelf to buy, and you couldn't see what ingredients were in it, like, how would you feel? Like, I'll just go with a very simple analogy.
Great analogy.
Think about.
Love that.
A software bill of materials is just like the ingredient list on the food you buy, and just as important.
And now I'm writing that down to use it later. And while I'm doing that, Boris, anything else you want to add in there?
Yes. So first of all, the first thing that I agree actually, and the service bill of material, you can provide this for the SOC team. Yeah, for example, and to show them and demonstrate the coverage, the security coverage of your system. And I would say that almost all auditors now they also asking companies to provide such a bill of material, and it's basically. But internally, maybe it's needed for external users, but for internal, for the team, it's important to have a solution that will show not the service bill of material, but like a security solutions doing the building, the graph of your the whole system. Yeah, so they analyzing all of your components, and because then you can easily navigate. So this is based on what the experience and the SaaS of successful SaaS projects and that I've been using.
Cool. All right. So I want to combine the last two topics. We have been walking around AI, and organizational problems are some of the hardest security things that we face, right? So in our research, we're seeing things on the organizational side. Budgets, resource constraints are about 39%. It's in my way. Followed closely by alert correlation difficulty, staffing gaps, governance overhead, unclear ownership. And then on the AI side, we see 40% of people, or respondents, I should say, are already using AI agents in production. I was doing a leadership conference and was doing a talk saying that this is the 5 years ago was the last generation of managers that didn't have to manage pseudo people in these AI agents, right? So it's a big deal. And for the people piloting these AI agents, they're concerned about all the things you would be concerned about, right? Data leaks through prompts or outputs, secrets exposure, insecure integrations with other systems. I mean, there's a whole host of new things. So what are two questions, right? First, from your vantage point, I want to know from where you're coming from. What is this organizational issue that's creating the most drag on your security stuff? And then what are you hearing most about the AI agents on the security side? And do those things mix, or is there any correlation between the organization side and these agents? right? And I'll go backwards again, and we'll go to my left, which is Boris. And, give me your thoughts on those two things here in like the last 5 or 6 minutes. I want everybody to kind of be able to chime in here.
Exactly. The first and the biggest issue with AI agents that everyone connecting everything, all private accounts from the company across using MCP servers to the agent without any security layer, without any authorization. Yeah. So everyone, I think, know this open source framework. Yeah. I will not mention the name, but it was already a big security issue, right? Everyone knows this. Yeah. 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 And how people connect and everything, like all the ticketing system, some even bank accounts there without understanding. And the second issue, some company using agents as a emulate hacker attack. So they creating several agents and they acting as hackers and trying to hack the system. Yeah, which is also great. So this is one agent issue producing the security issue. Another part of the agent, it's basically trying to solve this issue. So that was based on my experience in the.
Okay, that's a little scary. I got you.
And some companies now blocking all access to the agents completely, only with a specific authorization and authentication. So,
Okay, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these when you say which is the biggest risk. The answer, of course, the cop-out answer is, of course, all of them. But at the end of the day, why do we care about them? It's because we care about data leaks. We care about, those are the things that at the end of the day, why do we actually care about if a secret leaks? Well, we care about if a secret leaks because that then leads to a later data leak. So there is a little bit of underneath this all, it really is about avoiding data leaks and sort of those sorts of compromises. Or I guess there is the counterpoint of sometimes it's not the data leak, sometimes it's the ransom. Because you definitely see some of those too, of the this is being done as a attempt to get money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Jeremy, I think you brought us full circle back to the data-centric approach at the beginning.
I'd like to say I did it on purpose, but
it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Checks in the mail. All right, Stephen.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think in there you had the operational side of the question and then the AI agents. And it's kind of unfortunate to need to bring up the budget conversation. And that was the note that I made that Brad mentioned earlier. But, we did a report earlier in the year, or Q4 2025, I think. And we basically saw that those with greater resource constraints, inclusive of people and money and tools and what have you, that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that those who had higher resource constraints, on average, were more likely to have suffered a security incident in the last year. They were slower to respond when incidents happen. They were less likely to be able to continuously monitor for vulnerable components and things like that. And so it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way. And going back to the operational bottleneck or the friction there, these AI agents, again, another research that I've seen that we've accomplished is basically that I think it was something to the effect of it was like 53% of organizations saw more than a 25% increase in code volume from using AI agents in production, or rather during development, I should say. And so now you've got this huge increase in code volume, and you've got developers who are becoming less and less aware or informed of not just what is in their code, but how it's structured. And you've got to debug it or fix an issue, and they're not intimately familiar with the structure of this code anymore. So we're seeing the benefits that are gained by faster throughput for developers being completely consumed by more time spent debugging, more time trying to locate security issues and these things on the back end. And so I think, that operational pressure is certainly compounded by AI agents, and it's not helped. I mean, we can't get in the way of it. These AI agents are here. We can't say, hold on, stop. As much as some security folks may want to, you may want to go back to the gate versus the guardrails side of the coin. But the organization is compelling the use of AI to be more efficient and cut costs and all these things. We're not going to get in the way and stop it. And so it's, I see, when I cross tab some of this data difference between what the execs feel and what the dev teams feel, the execs, for example, much more commonly say code quality is great. We save a ton of time. And then the devs say, code quality is okay from these AI agents, and I'm not saving that much time. There's a much more optimistic view from the top down. And that's kind of what we're rowing against here on the security and DevSecOps side.
Yeah. Okay. Brad?
The thing that I see in our conversations is ambiguity of ownership. Like who owns our identity? Is it security or engineering or platform? Because when auth Z and auth N then fall into that gap between the teams and nothing moves fast, it drags everything down. Every team depends on it. Nobody wants to own the outage at 2 a.m. and get the pager duty call. The accountability gap is oftentimes where we see most delays living. And it's, I think, kind of to go a little further down that rabbit hole. Stephen Willis, a super, super smart dude, he talks about like this lethal trifecta of access to private data, plus the ability to communicate externally, and then exposure to untrusted input. Most teams are really only thinking about one leg of that because it's the only thing that really affects their team. And so then the threat lives right in that Venn diagram in the middle of all of it, and no team really owns it.
Okay. Well, we've got just like 2 minutes left. 10-second answer each. Lightning round. Looking ahead, I want one action item that an engineering leader cannot afford to ignore over the next year. Just super quick, popcorn it off. Steven goes first.
I think an engineering leader needs to ensure that whatever automation they put in place for finding and fixing issues is going to have the greatest impact, provided that it's informed by something that's aligned to what security needs. So you're not wasting time fixing things that are not an issue. And also so that you're getting the feedback and insight from the security team or from these security testing tools on how to fix something that is a priority. Because the dev teams, whether you fall on the end that you're hiring more junior developers because they're going to use AI coding tools, or you're relying more on senior so you can cut staff for junior and rely on those agents, either way, they're not security experts. They need that insight. So whatever automation you do have, you don't want that automation to propagate issues faster without having the solution to those issues propagate as well.
Okay. Jeremy?
I'll go with, as an engineering leader, much like you own the development, the engineering, you own the security, you own the operations, you own the testing.
Okay.
Don't think of it as somebody else's problem.
Yep. There you go. Ownership. Love it. Boris?
I think my current goal as the engineering lead as well in the company, as everyone moving towards the AI and agentic AI, ensure that on the design and on architecture level, the data is not shared outside. So this is my main goal. This is the concrete goal. So basically,
cool. Good one. All right, Brad, wraps up.
Treat identity as infrastructure, especially as it relates to authorization. It's the same category as compute and networking, because with the velocity at which things are moving these days, the blast radius is bigger than it has ever been. And, orgs are still running hard-coded service accounts.
Oh, man. Yep. Good. Well, listen, thanks, y'all, for joining us today. And thank you for everyone out there to join in and tune in and hopefully learn something from us. We got a really good cross-section across the market from these experts. So thanks again. To learn more, you can download the full publication for free at dzone.com. And if you're not already a member, signing up's free, gives you access to all the trend reports, ref cards, and upcoming events just like this one. Hope you have a great day. We will see you next time.